Hello again! This video is an open letter to the developers of Adobe Premiere Pro. It's a bug report and feature request for Premiere Pro 2015.0. If you're a video editor who works with Premiere, you're going to want to watch this video too, because at the end of the video, I'm going to ask you to fill out an Adobe wish form so that we can get these problems fixed. Because there are some really bad problems this time around, and I need your help. I already made two other videos, a bug report and a feature request, for Premiere 2014.2, and those videos are just as relevant as ever, so you can find links to those in the video description. Ever since then, we've been updated to Premiere Pro CC 2015. And frankly, I prefer CC 2014.2 because it has a lot less bugs, and I'm going to show you all of the new bugs that I've encountered right now. Keep in mind, not all of these are new bugs, but they all do exist in CC 2015.0.2. Okay, first up, we have a whole new boatload of awful audio playback problems. The first and worst is the fact that sometimes audio just does not play at all. You'll be editing normally, listening to the video, and the audio just cuts out. This happens to me dozens of times per day.
The iPhone 6s, the entire internet.
You can get the audio to work again by pausing and playing the video, but you'll usually have to rewind because you've missed something important. The error message is either audio hardware I/O overload at 00, audio and video clock out of sync at 00.
Edge up first. 5522. Wowza!
Audio not found.
There's a couple of different things going on here,
Or audio not found at 00.
Out of it, which led my inquisitive mind to go, hold on a second.
I've also had it happen where the audio cuts out and you don't get an error message.
For a while? This is a whole new level.
I actually like the new error messages that pop up on the side of the screen now. It lets me know that at least Premiere knows there's been an error. Bug number 2. When a new audio track begins, sometimes you get this loud pop in one or both ears.
Okay, so,
Let them know that we sent you. Thanks for watching. Thanks for watching, guys. If this video sucked, you know what to do, but if it was awesome, get subscribed.
It goes all the way up to 0 decibels, maximum volume, no matter how quiet your actual audio is. This happens to me a few times a day, and when I rewind to listen again, the bug has never repeated itself. Bug number 3. Sometimes when you're playing your video, you get this horrible, loud noise instead of the correct audio. I'm so sorry to subject you to this horrible noise, but you need to know.
Okay, so let's get it. Let's start it.
Boy, that really gets my heart rate up. Keep in mind that it's actually about 5 times louder than what you just heard. The actual volume is so loud that the recording and replay can't even handle it, so I had to turn it down just so you could hear it. I did some extra research on this bug, and it turns out that it has existed since before Premiere Pro 2015, but personally I have not experienced it up until this new version. Whatever the case may be, the audio in 2015 is just terrible and it needs to be fixed. Here's a simple one. Sometimes the audio waveforms for nested clips does not show up on the timeline. It will show up if you go into the nest and you look around, all the audio waveforms are there, but you go back out to the main timeline, you can't see them. The audio still plays, but the waveforms don't show up. And yes, I did render this audio as well, and it still didn't show up. What I had to do was restart Premiere, obviously, and then when I rendered the audio, I got the waveforms back. Very similar to that last one, sometimes you can't see the audio waveforms in the source monitor. Sometimes they just don't show up. You can click around, you can try to, do whatever to get them to show up. The audio still plays, but the waveforms do not show up. And again, you have to fix this by restarting Premiere, basically. Or sometimes it'll randomly fix itself, but I have no idea. Look, see, I redragged the window and it shows up. Who knows? I like to play the video while editing it, simply because this is faster than pausing every time you want to do something. This usually works fine, but sometimes you encounter bugs like this one. If you're playing the video and approaching a clip on the timeline, and you move that clip forwards or backwards in time, Premiere will sometimes get confused and it'll play frames from both the current and previous position of that clip. You see what happens? It doesn't know where the clip is located in time. It keeps jumping back and forth between those two possibilities. When you stop playback and hit play again, everything is fine and the clip plays correctly. But I don't want to have to double tap spacebar every single time I want to make a change to my timeline. That's a big waste of time. Also, the same thing happens if you're using the slip tool on a clip while you're playing that clip in the timeline. Whatever you guys do to fix this one, please, please, please do not force Premiere to stop playback every time a clip is dragged onto the timeline or dragged around on the timeline. That would technically fix the problem, but it would absolutely cripple my speed-optimized workflow, and I'm sure the workflow of many other editors as well. Here's an interesting one. This doesn't happen very often. Sometimes Premiere does not always display the sizes or positions of objects correctly while the video is playing. When you pause, the size goes to what it's supposed to be. When you start playing, the size goes to something weird. I'm not quite sure why this happens. I suspect it may have to do with right-clicking and selecting Edit in Adobe Photoshop. I believe I rescaled this particular image to be smaller because it was a lot larger than it needed to be. And because of that, I guess part of Premiere was updated with this new information of the smaller image, but then the large image remained in the memory of Premiere somewhere else. And so when you play, it uses that memory, that it's bigger. I don't know, maybe. Please note that when I rendered this, it did use the correct size. I've encountered the same bug with positions of objects being moved around as well. Again, probably the same problem. I don't know if it's because of the Edit in Adobe Photoshop thing that I did. Maybe it's because, I don't know, could be anything. But at least I was able to record this footage, so look into that one. Object selection sometimes stays on a particular object despite the user trying to select the one in front of it. So what happens is you've got multiple objects overlapping on the program monitor, and you try to click on the one that's on top because you want to select it, because you want to change it, but for some reason the selection stays on another object that's further down in the stack. And you can unclick and you can click back on it and you can try all sorts of things, but you can't deselect it. Unless you go up here to the little icon up there and you click on that, and then it'll select the one that you actually want. A relatively rare bug though. The Video Effect Controls panel does not have its clips scale properly with the size of the clip as it is on the timeline. Check this out. When you're changing the size of the clip, the Effect Control panel doesn't scale right. It scales up, it scales down. You can't go off to the side to try to get more of the clip. Like I've got, look at this. Look, that's only half. Why is it only showing me half up in the effect controls? I can't move the keyframes to where I want. You have to deselect the clip and then reselect the clip. Then it'll be properly scaled in the effect controls panel. Unfortunately, you have to do this every single time that you resize a clip because it always scales it wrong in the effect controls panel. This used to work. I would really like it if this one was fixed, because this is a major waste of time. Okay, try this one on for size. Sometimes if you plug in some speakers or you unplug speakers or you change your audio hardware, Premiere doesn't know what to send audio to, so you have to tell it what the correct audio device is. That's fine. It knows, and it gives you this little pop-up that's like, oh, you should change the audio device. If you say yes, it crashes the whole program. Let's try that again. Go to audio hardware. Okay. Waiting. We're waiting for it to open here, by the way. Okay. Let's say no. Now we can change the output to the correct. There it is. Click on that and say yes, change it. And now it's fine. Now everything is okay. But if you go into preferences and you say yes to this little pop-up, the whole system crashes. Also, sometimes this bug is so bad that you don't even have to click yes to accept the little pop-up. Premiere just crashes immediately. Okay, I talked about this one in the last video, but I didn't cover it completely. Whenever you open the titler, it takes so long for it to configure itself into the final position that it's gonna be. I try to open the titler and watch this. And now I can use it. What is going on here? Why does it have to freak out for a couple of seconds before I'm capable of actually doing anything? Here, just look at this as an example in someone else's program. Here's Robot C. When you launch the debugger, watch what happens to the windows. It's just reconfiguring itself for no reason, and it's seconds before you can do anything. And that's exactly what the titler is doing every single time you open it. So I'm not calling this a feature request, I'm calling this one a bug. Not a particularly serious bug, it wastes time, but it's still a bug. I have now upgraded to a 4K monitor. Windows and other programs are not fully, truly optimized for 4K yet. But fortunately, Windows UI scaling actually works shockingly well. However, not every aspect of Premiere scales up properly. There's a couple of things left over in the program that don't scale. One of them is the dynamics effect. When you go in this little menu here, that's all screwed up. It's still small and it gets cropped off. And I'm sure that a lot of the other panels that are just like this have the same problem. It's not a huge problem. It's kind of a small bug. It's still functional, but it should, still be fixed. Oh, and while I'm at it, when you're making titles in the titler on a 4K monitor with UI scaling enabled by Windows, the text on the titler is actually quite pixely, and you have to go look at the program monitor to see what it's actually gonna look like. So for whatever reason, Windows UI scaling is not properly affecting those little thingies on the titler. Here's a new bug in Premiere CC 2015. When you're trying to trim the edges of clips by dragging them around on the timeline using your selection tool or whatever, Premiere lags considerably. It's super duper slow. And I'm not the only one who's noticed this. Obviously, this makes it very slow to work, very annoying to work. Fortunately, there is a workaround. It's not ideal, but you can go to your timeline display settings, the little wrench, and you can click it and say composite preview during trim. You uncheck that, and then your trim preview will no longer lag the crap out of your computer, and you won't be able to see everything that you otherwise would want to see, but it'll still work. This didn't used to be a problem, and I wish it wasn't a problem now, so that's a bug. Okay, this one's pretty annoying, and I'm pretty sure that it's new in CC 2015. So I just plugged in an SD card to my SD card reader, and I'm looking through it to see if there's any video files that I need for this particular project. I look through and I determine, oh, this is the wrong SD card, right? So I try to eject the card and I can't. It's blocked. If I close all Explorer windows, I close all other programs, it still does not let me eject the card. Guess what? It is Premiere that is interfering with my ability to eject this SD card. Even though I didn't do anything with Premiere and the SD card, I didn't import any footage, I just opened the card and looked at it and tried to eject, Premiere still, for some reason, grabbed onto that card, and I can only eject the card once I close Premiere entirely, and I also have to close Adobe Media Encoder entirely. And this happens almost every time that I plug an SD card into my computer. If Premiere is open at all, even if I don't use the card for anything, I have to close Premiere before I can eject the card. This did not used to happen, and I don't understand why it happens now, and I certainly hope that that can be fixed. Okay, here's a rare but irritating bug. I can't tell you why this happened, but I couldn't even open Premiere one day. I'm not even opening a file to be opened in Premiere, I'm just opening Premiere by itself. And wouldn't work. So I had to restart the computer for that. I cannot tell you why this happened. I'm sure you guys couldn't tell me why it happened, which is why there should be some kind of automatic bug reporting when Premiere crashes. A lot of other programs have this, right? Program crashes. Would you like to send an error report to Mozilla? This would really help us. And you say yes, and it sends an error report. Just a thought. I'm sure it's come up already. Here's a rare bug. One time I was completely unable to copy and paste clip attributes from one clip in one project to another clip in another project. I can always usually do this. It works great. I love doing it because then I don't have to, I don't know how I would get those over there otherwise. Also, I could not copy and paste entire clips from one Premiere project to another Premiere project. And I ended up having to create a preset of the effects that I wanted to move over just to get them to move over into another project. This seems to be resolved once I restarted my computer. Again, really vague bug. I can't tell you why it happened. I can't give you any information. So obviously, if you guys had automatic bug reporting, this kind of thing would be easier to troubleshoot. Here's one that maybe it's working the way that it's supposed to, but maybe it's not. If you make a nested sequence out of stuff that you have on the timeline, it seems like it'll nest all of the video correctly, but it doesn't nest the audio. Like the audio, you see, it's still sitting there on the timeline. It's not stuck inside of a nest. However, when I go into the nest that I just created out of all of that stuff, I can see that the audio is, in fact, inside that nest. So then I have to go back out to the timeline and match frame to get that nest back up onto the source monitor, and from there I can drag the audio back out onto the timeline, and then I have the correct audio that is inside of that nest. This seems like a ridiculously long roundabout way of getting your nested audio to actually go into the nest. I don't understand it. Is it supposed to work this way? I don't think that it is. I think that's a bug. And if it's not a bug, then, well, I think it should work the way that I've just described. Here's another bug to do with nesting and waveforms. Sometimes, usually not, but sometimes when you zoom in and out to your timeline, the waveforms will become desynchronized. Now, the audio is still correct. When you play it, it's still correct. But the waveforms themselves, which I use to edit my video, they're very, very useful for that, are in the incorrect positions. And you can see that when I'm zooming in and out, the waveforms change positions. This error, obviously, fixed itself when I closed and reopened Premiere. But again, I'm having to close and reopen Premiere a lot, every single day, for all the bugs. Check this one out. When you nest clips, you're probably going to have to render the audio because, whatever, that's just how nesting works. Fine, that's fine. But when you're scrolling around the timeline with this nested audio, the waveforms disappear. They should work the same as regular clips do. You know, the audio on regular clips works fine. It doesn't disappear hardly at all when you're moving around. Is that a bug? Is this a feature request, that Premiere should be faster? I don't know. All right, check this one out. So I've got the fast color corrector tool here, and I'm making a mask onto this monitor because I want to use different color correction for the monitor than for the rest of the scene. Obviously, because it's a monitor, it's kind of hard to film that where it actually still looks good. So I put that mask on. The problem is, it seems to be applying the color correction for the first fast color corrector onto the second fast color corrector's mask. Did that make sense? It doesn't make much sense to me. So that's a bug. Oh, and here's another little annoying error. When you try to open the preferences panel, it takes, 4, 5, 6 seconds to open. And when you try to close it, it takes 1, 2, 3, 4, about 5 seconds. It didn't used to be that slow. It used to be instantaneous. I feel like that's more of a bug than anything else. Okay, now this one is technically a media encoder problem, but I always render using media encoder because it's really convenient to just have a queue of files to be rendered at the end of the day, and then you can just do it. That's great. But media encoder is now broken. When you export a file, it's supposed to leave behind this little thing that says, oh, you rendered this file, and here's where you can go to see it. But now, when you close media encoder and open it again, all that stuff is gone. I Googled for the answer to this one, and it said, oh, you got to reset your preferences. Oh, you got to do this. You got to do that. Nothing works. it still deletes all the references to the files that it's rendered. The files are still there, but it forgets that it's rendered them. And I have to go searching manually to go see if I've rendered something or not. So you know, it's broken. This is a bug. Okay, so that's it. That's all the bugs from Premiere Pro 2015.0.2 that I know of. Just like the last video, I would like to request that any Premiere Pro editors who are watching this, if you have encountered any of these bugs, it's very important to me that you file a bug report and report any of these bugs that you've experienced on your system and let the developers know, and then it's a lot more likely that the bugs will be fixed because they'll have a lot more information about how and why these things happen if they get a bunch of information from a lot of different people. Okay? However, again, the problem is that the bug reporter is limited to 2,000 characters, which means that you might have to submit multiple bug reports. Now, the idea here is that the video that I've just made, that you just watched, serves as a sort of a useful hub and a useful thing that you can link to visually show exactly what happens during these bugs. So, you know, a picture is worth 1,000 words, a video is worth even more, and so on and so forth. So again, submit your bug reports. Do it however you like. You can submit just the numbers of each bug. Again, I have them all listed down in the description. Just link back to the video and show all the numbers. Give them your computer specs and your version of Premiere and so on. Don't report bugs that you don't have, because that's stupid. Also, keep in mind I have a whole other video completely full of Premiere bugs that you might want to check out if you feel so inclined. I'd be very grateful if you would watch it and then submit all of those bugs that you're encountering, because there's some here that I still have problems with. For example, one of the big ones is when I launch the file window, it takes 5 seconds before it goes. And also whenever I move anything around on the program monitor, it glitches to the side. And those are still problems, right? So there's still other bugs in CC 2015 that I haven't even talked about because I talked about them in my last video. So you should watch that one too. Although I really suggest that you watch the 2014 feature request video, because there are some extremely useful and important features that I talk about there, and I would really like to get a lot of feature requests going to Adobe so they can understand how important these things are to us. And to the Premiere Pro developers watching this as well, thank you for watching my, what is this, the third video I've made complaining about Premiere? Boy, you guys are real troopers. I can't imagine that I'm particularly fun to listen to, right? Just sitting here complaining about Premiere for hours on end. I do like the program. I just wish that I could recommend it to people, because right now there are just too many serious bugs and missing features. All right, everybody, I'll see you in the next video. I've got some more feature requests. Not as big of a deal this time, but some of them, you know, I mean, watch the video for sure. Like, there's some good ones in there. The important thing here is the last videos that I made are still relevant, and some of those features are still really important. And I hope that it all gets done. I guess time will tell, won't it? Oh, and because this is a bug report, I'm just going to include all of the information about my machine and my OS and my version of Premiere just right here at the end. I'm going to go through, I'm just going to show you all of my Premiere preferences right in here so you can look at them, see if there's anything unusual. I know that resetting your preferences will sometimes fix certain errors. One unusual thing is that we put our media on a networked drive. We put our conformed audio files on a networked drive, and I feel like I've seen some things that tell me that maybe I should have those conformed audio files on the same drive as my actual computer, because Premiere and so many other programs don't play particularly nicely on networks. So there's all my settings.